Have you ever felt so overwhelmed, with bills piling up and the weight of the world on your shoulders, that you'd consider doing anything for relief? I have. My name is Frank, and for 40 years, my life was on the road. But one day, in the middle of the desert, a stranger offered me the solution to all my problems: a fortune in cash. The price? Only my soul. The decision I made that afternoon not only changed my life forever, it taught me the true value of things money can't buy. Stay with me and find out what happened. And let's go to the beginning of this story. But first, check if you're all ready. Subscribe to the channel, because the next videos will be a series of content that will leave you impressed. My name is Frank Miller. For 40 years, my home has been a truck cab, and my backyard the endless highways of America. My old companion, a Mac anthem I affectionately call Betsy, has seen more of this country than most people dream of seeing. Betsy and I have known the smell of diesel mixed with cheap gas station coffee in Nebraska, felt the biting cold of the Rocky Mountains in mid-January, and watched the sun rise over the Arizona desert, painting the sky with colors that make you believe there's something bigger watching over us. It's a lonely life, I won't lie. A life of missed birthdays and sleepless nights, with the longing for my wife Laura squeezing my chest like a too-tight seatbelt. But it's honest work. It always has been. At least, I thought it was, until that Tuesday that changed everything. I was on Interstate 40, in the middle of nowhere, the asphalt shimmering like a river of black glass under a merciless sun. The cargo was electronics, valuable, bound for Dallas. It was just another trip, another straight line on the map of my life, thinking about how the bills were piling up at home, and how a trucker's paycheck never seems to stretch far enough. It was one of those days when the monotony is so thick, you can almost touch it. The radio was playing old country, Johnny Cash's voice filling the silence of the cabin, when my eyes caught sight of something. A lone figure, standing on the shoulder, thumb extended. It was a woman. In heat like that, in the middle of the desert, miles from any town or gas station, she looked like a ghost, a mirage born of the infernal heat. Every fiber of my being, trained by decades of roadside horror stories, screamed at me to keep going. Don't stop, Frank. It's a trap. The road isn't what it used to be. The world isn't safe anymore. My hand remained firm on the steering wheel. My foot didn't ease off the accelerator. I was going to drive straight past. But then, for a split second, that woman's face reminded me of my own daughter, Jessica, and a cold thought ran down my spine. What if it were her? What if it were my daughter, alone, afraid, under that merciless sun, praying for a kind soul to stop and help? My heart won the battle against my head. Slowly, I slammed on the brake, feeling the weight of the 40-ton truck surrender to my decision. I pulled old Betsy over to the shoulder, about 100 yards ahead of her, the desert dust rising like a cloud of smoke. In the rearview mirror, I saw her running toward me, a mix of relief and despair on her face. In that moment, I thought I was doing the right thing. I was just a trucker doing a good deed. Little did I know that by opening that door, I wasn't just offering a ride. I was inviting the biggest test of my life to sit right there next to me. When I opened that door, I wasn't just offering a ride. I was inviting the biggest test of my life to sit right there beside me. Her name was Sarah. Her eyes were tired but alert, and she carried only a small, worn backpack. When she stepped into the cabin, the relief on her face was so genuine that any remaining suspicions I had dissolved like sugar in hot coffee. She thanked me in a voice, a little hoarse from thirst, and said she was trying to get to Albuquerque to find her daughter. The story was simple, almost too common. A mother trying to reunite with her child. Who could suspect something like that? The conversation flowed naturally. We talked about the weather, how lonely life on the road can be, the best places too. Eat good chili in Texas. She was a good listener. To fill the silence that sometimes fell, I took out my wallet and showed her the photos I've carried with me for years. The photo of my wedding with Laura, her so beautiful in her white dress, looking like an angel. The photo of our son, Mike, at his college graduation, with that proud smile only a son can give his parents. And the photo of my granddaughter, little Emily, with her bright eyes and a smile that could melt the hardest man's heart. I spoke of my family with a burst of pride. I spoke of how hard it was to be away, of the bills that never seemed to decrease, of the dream of one day being able to buy Laura a better house. I was pouring my heart out to a complete stranger. It's funny how the loneliness of the road does that to us. Sometimes you just need a friendly ear, someone who won't judge you, to unburden yourself of the worries you keep locked away. Sarah listened attentively, nodding at the right moments, asking the right questions. She seemed to care. She seemed to understand the burden a family man carries on his shoulders. But somewhere along the way, after we'd been driving for over an hour, the mood in the cabin began to shift. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. The casual conversation stopped. She stood still, staring intently at the road ahead, as if calculating. Something in her mind. The silence, once comfortable, was now heavy, charged with a tension I couldn't explain. That's when she turned to me, her gaze completely different. The weariness in her eyes was gone, replaced by a cutting coldness, an intensity that sent a chill down my spine, despite the heat outside. The woman who had looked like a desperate mother was gone. In her place was a businesswoman, a predator, and she looked at me as if I were her prey. The question she asked me next wasn't about my family or the road. It was a question that changed the tone of our trip and the course of my life. It was a question that made me realize that the story about her daughter in Albuquerque was just a facade, bait to catch a tired and worried fish like me. The question she asked me next wasn't about my family or the road. It was a question that changed the tone of our trip and the course of my life. It was a question that made me realize the story about her daughter in Albuquerque was just a facade, bait to catch a tired and worried fish like me. Her voice firm, without a hint of her former fragility, she said, "Frank, let's stop pretending. I know exactly what you're carrying back there. $500,000 worth of high-end electronics. Easy to sell, hard to track." My blood ran cold. My hands, which had previously gripped the steering wheel with the ease of someone who knew every inch of the road, now gripped it so tightly my knuckles turned white. How did she know? Who was she? Questions swirled through my head like a tornado, but I couldn't form a single word. I just kept driving, staring at the white line dividing the highway, as if it were my only lifeline. She smiled, a cold, humorless smile. "Don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you. Quite the opposite. I'm here to help you. I'm here to offer you an opportunity." Then she opened the backpack on her lap. The same battered backpack that had previously seemed to contain only a few clothes and maybe a bottle of water. From inside, she pulled out a thick, plastic-wrapped bundle. It was $100 bills, lots of them. $50,000. She said, placing the bundle on the dashboard right in front of me. "Cash, clean, it's yours. All you have to do is take the next dirt exit, about 10 kilometers from here. My partners will be waiting in an abandoned warehouse. They'll unload the truck in less than an hour. No violence, no weapons, no noise. Then you're on your way, and a few hours later, you call the police. Say you were robbed, that they drugged you and took everything. They'll never find out." $50,000. The number echoed in my head, drowning out the sound of Betsy's engine, drowning out Johnny Cash's voice on the radio, drowning out my own conscience. $50,000. I saw Laura's face, smiling, finally able to get the knee surgery. Her insurance company kept postponing. I saw my son, Mike, finally able to make the down payment on the house he'd always dreamed of, instead of renting. I saw the piles of bills on my kitchen table disappearing. I saw a life without the constant weight of financial worry. A life where I could breathe a sigh of relief for the first time in years. Think about it, Frank, she continued, her voice now soft, seductive, like a snake's. You've worked hard for 40 years. And what do you have to show for it? A bad back and an old truck. The system doesn't care about you. They use you until you can't take it anymore, and then they discard you. That's not a crime. It's a correction. It's you taking back a small slice of what they owe you. She was good. She wasn't just offering me money. She was offering me justification, an excuse for doing the wrong thing. She was turning a robbery into an act of justice. And the scariest part was that, for a moment, her words made sense. For a moment, the temptation was so strong, so real, that I could almost taste victory. And the scariest part was that, for a moment, her words made sense. For a moment, the temptation was so strong, so real, that I could almost taste victory. $50,000 sat there, a hand's breadth away, on the dashboard of my old Betsy. The money glinted in the desert sun, promising an end to all my sleepless nights, an end to arguing with Laura about which bill to pay first. But to get my hands on that money, I would need to sell something far more valuable, something priceless, my soul. In that instant, a movie began to play in my head. It wasn't a Hollywood film with heroes and villains. It was the movie of my life. I saw my father, a simple man, a carpenter, his hands calloused from overwork. He never had much, but he always told me, "Frank, a man is as good as his word. You can lose everything in life, your house, your money, even your health. But if you keep your character intact, you'll never be a poor man." His words, which I hadn't heard in so many years, echoed in the cabin with more force than Sarah's proposal. I saw myself as a small child, about 10 years old, when I took $1 from my father's wallet without asking. He didn't hit me. He didn't yell. He just sat with me, looked me in the eye, and told me that trust was like a mirror. Once broken, you can glue the pieces back together, but it will never be the same. I cried for hours that day, not from the scolding, but from the shame. The shame of having disappointed my hero. And now, here I was, a man in my late 60s, considering doing something 1,000 times worse. How would I look my son, Mike, in the eye and continue to give him advice on being a good man? How would I look at my granddaughter, Emily, knowing that the gift I gave her was bought with dirty money, with the money of my dishonesty? The wad of cash on the dashboard began to lose its shine. It no longer seemed like the solution to my problems. It seemed like the beginning of a nightmare. A nightmare where I would have to live the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, afraid of a knock on the door. A nightmare where I would no longer be able to look at myself in the mirror without feeling disgusted by the man staring back at me. Sarah noticed my hesitation. Her smile faded. "What is it, Frank? Are you scared?" she teased. "Don't tell me. You're one of those fools who believes in honesty. Honesty doesn't pay the hospital bills. Honesty doesn't buy a house." She was poking at the wound, trying to use my own weaknesses against me. She didn't know that by doing so, she was actually reminding me of who I really was. I wasn't a thief. I wasn't a criminal. I was Frank Miller, son of an honest carpenter, Laura's husband, Mike's father, Emily's grandfather. I was a truck driver. And no matter how hard life got, I always knew the difference between right and wrong. The sign for the dirt exit was approaching. I had mere seconds to make the decision that would define the rest of my existence. The devil and the angel on. My shoulders were screaming at the same time. and I had to choose which one to listen to. So, have you ever heard a story like this? Did you know it existed? Let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced this, or if you know someone you know who has. I'll help you out in the comments. The devil and the angel on my shoulders were screaming at the same time, and I had to choose which one to listen to. The dirt exit sign, once a mere green dot on the horizon, now loomed large, just a few feet away, like a portal to hell or redemption. This is it, Frank. Decide. Your old life of hardship or a comfortable future. It's your choice, Sarah's voice sounded like an ultimatum. My right foot hovered over the accelerator, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would rip through my chest. I felt the weight of 40 years on the road, the weight of all my choices, the weight of my father's gaze upon me. I closed my eyes for a split second, and then a piercing clarity, like lightning in the middle of a storm, invaded my mind. There was no choice to be made. There never had been. I knew what I had to do. I always knew. Instead of turning the steering wheel to the right, onto the dirt road that led to easy money, I slammed on the brake. Old Betsy protested. The tires screeched on the hot asphalt, and the truck screeched to a halt on the shoulder, just a few feet from the exit sign. The wad of cash on the dashboard flew to the floor of the cab with the impact. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah looked at me, first with surprise, then with cold rage. "What are you doing? Are you crazy?" she hissed. I turned to her, not with anger, not with fear, but with a calm I hadn't felt in a long time. The calm of a man who had finally made peace with his own conscience. "Get off," I said, my voice firm. "What?" she asked in disbelief. "I told you to get off," I repeated, louder this time. "Get off my truck, now." She started to laugh, a mocking laugh. "Oh, Frank, you don't get it, do you? There's no such thing as no. If you don't cooperate willingly, you'll be forced to. My partners are right behind us, following us. Do you really think you're just going to say no and move on?" Her smile was one of someone who held all the cards. But she didn't know I had an ace up my sleeve. An ace called dignity. "Maybe," I said, grabbing my cell phone from the dashboard holder. "But until they arrive, I have enough time to make a call. You know, I passed a state police car about 20 miles ago." I wrote down the number. An old trucker's habit. "I'm sure they'll love to hear offer. And I'm a 60-year-old man with a clean record. You're a woman offering money to steal a load. Who do you think they'll believe?" Her face changed. The smile faded. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt, maybe even fear, in her calculating eyes. She looked at the phone in my hand, then at the empty road behind us. She was calling the bluff. What she didn't know was that it wasn't a bluff. I would make that call without a second thought. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life," she said, picking up her backpack and the wad of cash from the ground. "Maybe," I replied, "but at least I'll be able to sleep tonight." She opened the door and climbed out, slamming it shut with a force that shook the entire cab. Before she walked away, she leaned against the window. "The next trucker will take it, Frank, and he'll take the 50 grand that could have been yours. You'll regret this when the bills come." I just looked at her and started the Betsy. "May God have mercy on his soul, then," I said, more to myself than to her. "Because he'll have sold yours for very little. Because he'll have sold yours for very little." I shifted into first gear and pulled the Betsy back onto the asphalt, my heart still hammering in my chest like an out-of-tune engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw Sarah's figure shrinking, getting smaller and smaller in the vastness of the desert, until she became just a black dot swallowed by the mirage of heat. She didn't seem concerned about being alone there, which only confirmed my suspicion that her partners were nearby, watching everything from a distance. When she finally disappeared from my sight, I let out a breath I hadn't even realized I'd been holding. My hands, which had previously been steady, now trembled on the steering wheel. The adrenaline that had kept me going began to fade, giving way to a deep weariness, an exhaustion that came from the soul. I had done the right thing. I knew it. Every fiber of my being told me I had made the only choice possible. But I'll be honest with you, I didn't feel like a hero. A part of me, the part that was thinking about the bills, about Laura's surgery, about Mike's house, was screaming, "You idiot, this was your chance, the chance of a lifetime." The image of that bundle of cash, so real, so close, wouldn't leave my mind. The road ahead seemed longer and lonelier than ever. I turned the radio up loud, trying to drown out my thoughts with the loud music, but the voice of doubt was more insistent. I kept checking the rearview mirror every few minutes, expecting to see a suspicious car approaching, expecting retaliation. Would they come after me? Would they try to take the cargo by force? Sarah's promise that there would be no violence now rang hollow. I decided not to stop at the gas station I had planned. I didn't feel safe. I kept driving for another 2 hours, pushing Betsy and myself to the limit, until I found a large truck stop, one of those huge, well-lit places full of other truckers. It felt like a small town in the middle of nowhere. I parked the Betsy in a visible spot near the entrance, under a streetlight. Before trying to sleep, I locked the doors 3 times and placed my old 12-gauge shotgun, an inheritance from my father, next to me on the bed. I'm not a violent man, but 40 years on the road teaches you that it's better to have something and not need it than to need it and not have it. Sleep wouldn't come. I lay there, staring at the cabin ceiling, replaying every detail of the conversation. Had I been foolish? Was honesty, in today's world, just a luxury for those without real problems? I thought about my family. Would they understand? Or would they see me as the man who had the chance to solve all his problems and threw it away? Because of outdated pride? The night was long, full of shadows and uncertainty. I had overcome temptation, but the battle within me was far from over. And I had no idea that the road, that old, unpredictable friend, still had the biggest surprise of all in store for me. The real test was yet to come, and it wouldn't come in the form of a mysterious woman, but rather with red and blue lights flashing in my rearview mirror. The real test was yet to come, and it wouldn't come in the form of a mysterious woman, but rather with flashing red and blue lights in my rearview mirror. The next morning, after a bad night's sleep and strong coffee that tasted more like mud, I hit the road again. The sun was rising, painting the sky with the same colors as always, but to me, the world looked different. I felt different, proud and scared at the same time. I tried to stick to my routine. I called the trucking company to report my location, as I do every morning. The familiar voice of my dispatcher, Bill, on the other end of the line, was like an anchor of normalcy in a sea of chaos. "Everything okay, Frank?" he asked. I hesitated for a second. Should I tell him? Should I report the attempted robbery? But what would I say? That I'd given a ride to a woman who offered me money, and I'd told her to get off in the middle of nowhere? Would they believe me? Or would they think I was a crazy old man, maybe even an accomplice? "Everything's fine, Bill. Just the usual traffic," I lied. I felt like a coward for not telling him, but the truth was, I was alone with that secret. Alone with that battle is fought and won, but which had left me full of invisible scars. I kept driving toward Dallas. With every passing mile, the tension eased a little. Maybe Sarah was just a lonely opportunist. Maybe her partners were just a bluff to scare me. I was less than an hour from my destination, already feeling the relief of reaching the end of this hellish journey when it happened. The lights. red and blue, pulsing, spinning, filling my rearview mirror. A Texas State Police car was right on my tail, and the siren blared, a short, authoritative wail. My heart leaped and jumped into my throat. I was caught. This was it. Sarah must have called them, made up some story, said I'd attacked her, or that I was involved. My life was over. I glanced at the speedometer. I wasn't speeding. I mentally checked everything. Documents, licenses, everything was in order. There was no reason for them to pull me over, unless she'd reported me. With shaking hands, I signaled and pulled Betsy over to the shoulder. The patrol car stopped right behind. 2 officers got out. One older, with a gray mustache and a serious expression, and one younger, with a fresh-out-of-school look. The older one approached my window. "Good afternoon, sir. License and vehicle registration, please." I tried to hand him the documents without him noticing the tremor in my hands. He examined them calmly, while the younger officer walked around the truck, inspecting the tires and cargo seals. "Coming from where, sir?" the officer asked. "From Phoenix, sir. Taking electronics to a warehouse in Dallas," I replied, my voice weaker than I would have liked. He handed me back the documents. "Everything's in order, Mr. Miller, but we'll need to check your cargo." My stomach churned. It was a routine inspection, I told myself. Nothing major. But I couldn't stop thinking about Sarah. What if she'd slipped something into the cargo? Drugs? Anything to incriminate me? For the next 20 minutes, which felt like an eternity, they opened the compartment, checked the bills, checked the seals. I stood outside, standing on the shoulder, feeling the sweat drip down my back as the cars whizzed by. Finally, they were done. "All right, you can close it," the older man said. A sigh of relief escaped my lungs. It was just an inspection after all. But just as I was about to return to the cabin, the older officer approached me. The serious expression on his face had been replaced by something I couldn't decipher. "Mr. Miller," he said, his voice low, "the load is perfect. But that's not why we stopped you. The truth is ... that was a test." Well, we're almost at the end, but first, I noticed that you haven't liked this video yet. This is very important for YouTube to continue sharing our content, and this way, we will continue to help you. So please like this video. It's free, okay? Continuing ... the truth is, that was a test. The officer's words hung in the hot Texas air, but my brain refused to process them. Test? What do you mean? A test? "Sorry, officer, I don't understand," I stammered, feeling like a fool. The older officer gave a faint smile, the first I'd seen from him. "The woman you picked up yesterday, Sarah, she's not a criminal. She works for a private security company. Your trucking company hired them to test the integrity of drivers." I stood there, standing on the shoulder, staring at his face, trying to find any sign that this was a sick joke. My mind was spinning. Was Sarah an actress? All that conversation, the story of her daughter, the proposal, the tension. Had it all been an act? An elaborate act to trap me? A wave of anger began to rise in my throat. Is this ... is this legal? I asked, indignation leaking into my voice. Can they just do that? Play with people's lives like that? Not the way it was done, no, the officer admitted. But the carriers are desperate. Cargo theft with the help of drivers has become an epidemic. They feel they need to take drastic measures. And we were informed about the operation. That's why we were here. To confirm that the cargo was intact and that you had passed the test. I passed the test. The sentence echoed in my head. So, all that anguish, all that internal battle had been real, but the threat wasn't. I hadn't defeated a gang of thieves. I had defeated myself. I had fought my own demons and won. The relief I felt was immense, as if a 100-ton weight had been lifted from my shoulders. But the anger was still there. The anger at having been manipulated, at having my weaknesses, my family concerns, used against me. The feeling of having my privacy invaded was horrifying. "Are you okay?" asked the younger officer, who had been quiet until then. "Honestly, I don't know," I replied, running my hand over my face. "I feel used. If it's any consolation." "Mr. Miller," the older officer said, a note of respect in his voice, "you were one of the few, one of the very few." That took me by surprise. "What do you mean?" "In this operation, they've already tested 20 drivers before you. Do you know how many turned down the offer?" He paused, looking me in the eye. "Only 2. You're the third. 3 out of 20. The statistic hit me like a punch in the gut. Professional colleagues, men with whom I probably share a coffee, a story, a laugh, were choosing the wrong path. The sadness I felt was profound, not just for the men, but for what it said about our profession, about the pressures we were facing. "Can I go now?" I asked, wanting only to get out of there, to be alone with my thoughts. "Yes, of course. Have a safe trip, Mr. Miller, and congratulations." I returned to the Betsy's cab, feeling as if I'd aged 10 years in 2 days. I started the engine and headed back down the road. Relief, anger, sadness, and a strange sense of pride mixed within me. I'd made the right choice, even when I thought no one was looking, and apparently someone was. I delivered the cargo to the Dallas depot, signed the papers, business as usual. I was exhausted, ready to hit the road back home, when a man in a suit, wearing a company badge, approached me. "Mr. Frank Miller? My name is Nivaldo Roca. I'm the safety manager. Do you have a minute?" My heart sank again. That day seemed endless. But what he said to me next, in a small room at the back of the depot, proved to me that sometimes, when you refuse to take a shortcut, life rewards you by building a new road, a much better one, right in front of you. That day seemed endless. But what he told me next, in a small room at the back of the warehouse, proved to me that sometimes, when you refuse to take a shortcut, life rewards you by building a new road, a much better one, right in front of you. The man, Nivaldo Roca, began by apologizing. He said he was aware of the test, but that the way it was conducted, especially the invasion of my privacy by mentioning my family, was not in the plan, and that the security company would be held accountable. I just nodded, still suspicious. I'd heard too many speeches from men in suits to believe everything. But then he changed the subject. "Mr. Miller," he said, leaning forward, "our company has a serious problem. We've lost millions of dollars in the last year to theft and embezzlement. And the sad truth is that most of these cases were aided by insiders, people who sold out the trust we placed in them." He paused, and I felt the weight of his words. I thought of the 17 drivers who had accepted the offer. "That's why I'm here," he continued. "We need people like you, people with experience, respect, but above all, integrity. We need a leader. And that's why I'm authorized to offer you a promotion." I almost laughed. "Promotion? For me? An old trucker about to retire? We'd like you to accept the position of route supervisor." I was speechless. Route supervisor was an office job, a respected position. It meant less time on the road, a much better steady salary, real health insurance, and most importantly, more time at home. It meant being able to watch my granddaughter grow up, be there for Laura's birthdays, be the husband and father I always wanted to be, but that the road didn't always allow me to be. The job involves training new drivers, helping plan the safest routes, and most importantly, being a role model. We need someone who teaches the younger drivers that character is worth more than any load, he explained. And then he handed me an envelope. Inside was a check, $5,000. "This is a bonus," he said. "A small recognition of your integrity. $5,000. It wasn't the $50,000 Sarah had offered me, but this money was different. It was clean. It was honest. It was money I could take home and show my family with pride, looking them in the eye without a hint of shame. It was proof that my father was right. Honesty, after all, paid off. And it paid off handsomely. I took the check, feeling its weight. In my hand, it was more than just paper. It was validation. It was respect. It was recognition for a lifetime of hard work and difficult choices. I left that room feeling a different man. The weariness was gone. The anger had dissipated. In its place was a sense of peace and optimism I hadn't felt in years. I began the long drive home to tell Lavra the news. Betsy rumbled softly on the asphalt, and for the first time in a long time, the road didn't feel lonely. It felt like the path back home to the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where I could finally reap the rewards I'd sown over a lifetime of righteousness. And when I arrived home late that night and saw the porch light on, the beacon Lara always left to guide me, I knew that no matter how dark the road might seem, the light of integrity always shows you the way back. And when I got home late that night and saw the porch light on, the beacon Lara always left to guide me, I knew that no matter how dark the road might seem, the light of integrity always shows you the way back. When I told Lara everything, she cried, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pride. "I never doubted you, Frank," she said, holding my hand. "The money would have helped, yes, but a husband I can admire is worth more than all the money in the world." At that moment, I knew I'd made the right decision, not just for me, but for us. I accepted the promotion, of course. The first few months were strange. Trading Betsy's cab for an office chair, the roar of the engine for the sound of the air conditioning, was an adjustment. I missed the freedom, the open horizon. But then, I began to see the other side. I began to see the impact I could have. Seeing a new driver I'd coached return from a difficult trip and thank me for the tips. Being able to go to my granddaughter's baseball game on a Tuesday afternoon. Having dinner with my wife every night. These were true treasures. The life I'd always dreamed of was becoming a reality. Not because I'd taken a shortcut, but because I'd refused to. With the $5,000 bonus and some savings, we were able to help our son Mike put a down payment on his first home. Seeing the joy in his eyes when he received the keys was a reward 1,000 times greater than any dirty money could buy. Laura's surgery was a success, and now she walks through our yard pain-free. Life has changed for the better. Sometimes during training sessions, I tell Sarah's story. I don't say it was a test. I tell it as a true story about a real temptation. And I see in the eyes of the newer drivers the impact she makes. I see them understanding that the road tests you in many ways, and the hardest test isn't a blizzard in the mountains or a flat tire in the desert. It's the test of your character when no one's looking. Old Betsy sits retired in my garage, clean and polished. On weekends, I take her for drives, sometimes with my granddaughter in the passenger seat, her eyes shining with excitement. She loves to honk the horn and pretend to drive. And I tell her my stories, not about the dangers, but about the beauty of the road, about the good people I've met, about the importance of always heading in the right direction, even if the journey takes longer. That $50,000 offer did, in fact, change my financial life, but only because I turned it down. Funny how life works, isn't it? In the end, a man's journey isn't measured by the miles he travels, but by the choices he makes at the ends. Crossroads. And on that hot afternoon on Interstate 40, I chose my father's path, the path of honesty. And that, my friends, is the only road that truly leads you home. Thanks for watching this far. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep up with the latest content. See you in the next video.